I'm sorry that I could not be there with you today because of visa issues, but given the theme of this event, I thought I shouldn't let any strings hold me back. And so here I am, in spirit. I was looking through the lens of my camera, two big piercing eyes looking right back at me, full of wicked smarts and determination. And I asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? Prepared to be pleasantly surprised yet again. Kids all over the ends of Pakistan were dreaming big, audacious dreams of becoming doctors, lawyers, the world's fastest pilots. The kid with the piercing eyes, with a slight hesitation in his voice, looked at me and he said, "A scientist?" "A scientist," I said. "Why a scientist?" "So I can bomb the enemy." I'm from a tiny village in Pakistan myself, a village that does not exist in the world on any maps, a village called Akri, where there's no clean drinking water, no proper toilets, or proper schools. My father was one of the only people from this village who got educated. He saw glimmers of the world beyond his village through his grandfather's eyes, who'd come back with fascinating, wondrous stories of the world outside. My father got consumed by the idea of simply going to a school and making something of his life. When he turned 7, he walked several miles to admit himself to a school. His parents, realizing their eldest son was about to desert them, were furious. The village elders enraged. How could he abandon his family, his community? But all that did was to spark a burning fire in my father's stomach, to discover, learn, explore, and do something extraordinary. He left the village, and he went on to attend medical school, where he met my mom, the most wonderful person in the world I know, and together they built a hospital. Where? In a tiny town right next to my father's village. They stayed with their family, their neighbors, their community through thick and thin, and made a home on top of that hospital where we grew up. To date, my mother must have taken care of hundreds of thousands of patients, our entire village, and then 1,000 more. When I was 2, my parents, wanting to give my brother and I a proper education, decided that they would move out of the village. They got us admitted to one of the best private schools in Pakistan. They were excited to start a new life with their new family. But when their patients got news of this, they came in masses, knocking on my mother's door, pleading her not to leave them. "We'll pray that your children go to the best schools," they said, "not just in Pakistan, but in the world. Don't leave us here." And my mother is the strongest believer in education. She wanted to give us the best chance at success in life. But she simply could not put one foot in front of the other and leave her patients behind. So she decided to stay in that village and put her trust in the fire we could cultivate in our hearts that would overcome all circumstances that are thrown our way. With no proper schools around, we were homeschooled much of our lives. Education became less about going through textbooks and more an adventurous quest to discover and explore. I learned literature from a local fledgling author, basic math from a retired university professor, and biology from the village's resident doctors, my parents. And the fire burned hard. I dreamt of going to the best institutions in the world and charted my path to Harvard, attaining a lifelong dream, and in the process, becoming the only women in my family to ever leave our village. And my brother made his way to Stanford, just like my mother's patients had wished for us, not in spite of, but because of her circumstances. And just like our father, who got to know the burning desire to educate himself, become a doctor, and serve his village because of his trying past. The thing is, we all come with strings. Think about it. We come with a name, a first and a last name. We're born male or female with a certain color to our skin, a certain ethnicity. We're born into traditions, norms, and expectations. All those are our strings, and our strings can hold us back. And while we may hate our strings, we cannot avoid them. And here's the other thing, and what I would like you to consider today. While our strings can hold us back, our strings can also give us direction. They can give us our passion, our purpose, our desire, our spark. Our strings are what can light the brightest fire within us. So my first message to you is, instead of attempting to detach yourself from your strings, from the burdens of your past and that of your identity, and becoming just like the next person, what if you embraced your unique strengths? What if you acknowledged them, let them live, and let them give you your purpose? Because true passion, true desire, true purpose is never instigated without a true fire. During my first semester at Harvard, I got to learn the story of a classmate from Israel, Avi Kramer. A rising star, a kind-hearted, ambitious young man ready to conquer the world with a gentle smile on his face. As he was starting his life at Harvard, his entire world changed around him in a matter of days. Before he knew it, he had lost the ability to walk, talk, move his hands, or feed himself. He was diagnosed with ALS, a rapidly degenerative, fatal illness with no cure or treatment. Every inch of Avi's body was tied to his strings tied shut to his wheelchair, and he was given roughly 1,000 days to live. But instead of preparing for his death, a computer scientist by training, Avi set out to investigate, understand, and decode what was happening to his body. He wanted to figure out why it was that there was no cure for the disease. He looked at each problem one by one, from lack of cross-disciplinary research to limited attention and incentives in the field, and devised a plan against them. He founded Prize for Life, an organization dedicated to novel forms of research and incentives addressing the reasons why the scientific community had not yet found a cure for ALS. It's now been nearly a decade that Avi was first diagnosed, and he's still going strong. He stretched those strings far and wide, and he challenged them just as much as his strings challenged his survival. So my second message to you is that when you look at your strings, realize that your strings are not meant to be left unquestioned. There's no reason why you shouldn't examine your strings, decode them, challenge them, and reform and transform them. If every generation left its strings in place exactly the way they found them, society would never move forward. Instead, if each of us embraced our strings, not so we can be tied down by them, but so we can reshape and reform them and chart a future from our past, we can move the world forward. It was a long, hard-won path to Harvard, but once there, I couldn't stay. Instead of feeling proud, I felt this deep guilt and embarrassment. I couldn't brush aside the fact that while I had come so far, my family, my village, stayed where it was decades ago. I knew the children of Akri dreamt the same dreams I did, and we shared the same strengths. Yet their lives and mine felt millions of miles apart. So I left. I left Harvard and went to my village and met hundreds of little children there. I took their pictures so I would always remember them, and I asked them what they wanted to be when they grow up. They shared their crazy, unreasonable dreams with me and filled my heart with love, hope, and finally pride. It was not till I was faced with those two beautiful, piercing eyes right in the middle of my village, my home, looking back at me through my camera lens. Not till that hesitant voice on the tiny frame told me he wanted to be a scientist so he could bomb the enemy, did I make the determination to build a school in Akri. In that moment, I felt I alone bore the responsibility to touch this one kid's life and save 1,000 more. I knew I had to give him the ability to question and challenge his strengths, his society's expectations and assumptions, just like Avi questioned the given assumptions of his time. This was my responsibility. This was my opportunity. Did I have the option to simply walk away? I started on a mission to raise $100,000 and build a school for 100 children in Akri, a school where I hoped these children could craft and realize purposeful dreams and learn to question, challenge, and reason for themselves. A place where I could create a future for my past. With the support of an amazing group of friends, colleagues, and partners, we formed our organization, the Dreamfly, and went on to build institutions and schools across Afghanistan, India, Rwanda, and soon Latin America, touching close to 5,000 lives. A tiny drop in a cosmic ocean, yes, but sometimes one drop is all it takes to start a sea change. So what we know about strings is that they hold us back. Strings live in the past, and they attach us to our past. They attach us to our barriers. But what we don't realize is that when we pull on those strings, we pull on our barriers just as much as our barriers pull on us. Our strings are the only thing we have that can let us move the heavy mountains of our past into the future with us. So my third and final message to you is this. Take a long look at your own strings, at your roots, your identity, your barriers, and ask yourself, how will you use your unique strings? What will you do with them? What will you let them do to you? Without strings, the most you can do is progress yourself. You can chase your dreams, yes. You can create your future. But in the process of crafting a new identity, a new destination, no strings attached, you would surely lose who you used to be, and with that, who you are. Your history, your gender, your ethnicity, your disabilities, your given assumptions, your unique ability to take everything that you come with and craft a future only you can uniquely craft for the world. Instead of detaching ourselves from our strings, what if we could see them in their piercing eyes, embrace them, and let them burn our fires? What if we could question them, challenge them, and reshape and reform them? What if we could use our strings to pull forward our society, our past, rather than be tied to it, and progress not just ourselves, but our generation, our communities, our worlds with us? Suddenly, life without strings feels too small a life to live.